Not one slice, one pie. Now I'm with you if I can eat a slice and a half. Big derby one time I
I
told
couldn't
him,
let you get any chain sizes smaller than mine, so get a little started.
I can get into 32s now.
That's what I heard. Okay.
You're done?
We're done talking their side conversation here. Whenever you want to continue.
Jason will not make it tonight, he's sick. So it's just gonna be the three of us.
Time of year.
Four of us. All right, next subject. The administering the oath of office. We typically do that when the newspaper guy's here so we can get a picture. Do you guys mind if we hold off on that? Or do you got places to
Get a
be?
picture.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I've got a camera, I've got my phone.
Well, I know, but only the newspaper guys know.
And I can get it today, I get to it.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll let him do his job.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, that's not exactly accurate. Yeah.
Same thing.
Mhm. Didn't last year.
Yeah, no, I didn't. It was the year before, but
Well, it's only just begun, there's only one person, wait till the rest of them
Yeah.
catch on.
Chief Swain would like to reinvigorate the city's participation in special emphasis patrols that result in reimbursements to the city from the Washington State Patrol. Is there any, we've already talked about this quite a bit, is there anything to add?
No, other than the agreement is in hand,
Mhm.
and we're ready to sign off on it.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is we will be given temporary sheriff's commissions to go through this, and then I suspect once this is started and we get involved in all of that, and part of the traffic safety team that's being established, we'll probably get our full commissions back from the sheriff, and we'll be going on it. And it'll also give our reserve officers an opportunity to participate.
Okay, and this is, so in the past, we've done these special emphasis patrols with the WSP, like Night of 1,000 Stars,
Right.
or, you know, whatever those special event things are when they're,
DUI patrol.
yeah, aggressive driving, no seat belts,
Yeah.
distracted driving, they
Right.
put out.
Cell phone.
Yeah, and so they hire all these local law enforcement agencies to go out and assist. We haven't done it for, what, have we ever done it when you were here? Did we when you first started?
Yeah, we did 3 DUI patrols last holiday season.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're renewing the agreement, and it's you know, it's in hand, we'll be signing off on it. It doesn't obligate the city to any additional financial things, other than, you know, maybe some extra mileage on the vehicles, but it's minimal. And then it allows these folks to work some extra hours. So we're gonna supplement their income.
Yeah, they pay, we don't.
Right.
What's that?
They pay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
They pay the overtime.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, sir. Next up, planning. So in an effort to better meet the needs of the Tenino citizens, the administration approached TRPC with proposals. So TRPC, we have 2 separate contracts with TRPC. One for TRPC membership, and that puts us into kind of the long-term milieu of regional planning and efforts. And then the other is local planning, where they have been serving as our planning agency. And you know, there's been highs and lows with regard to that. The contract was up at the end of this year. We told TRPC that we wanted to go out for an RFP and have a competitive bidding process. There were some things that we wanted to tweak. We went basically last year. We had a conversation with them about wanting to tweak some of the style of the service and the way in which the planning services were kind of meshing or not meshing with the greater city effort. And so, you know, we kind of had a discussion with them about our desire to kind of tweak some ways in which we were interacting. We gave it a year to kind of discuss. TRPC at the end of this year was talking about some different ways to kind of meet our needs. And in the end, they ended up saying that they would not be providing a proposal when we went out to RFP, and they gave us some different names of TRPC staff that had gone to private consulting, and then I was even kind of told that if we did go this route, we would probably save some money, and we could go directly to some of the service providers and maybe get a little more bang for our buck. So we did put out an RFP, we have received some proposals, and that is kind of where that is at. Did you have anything to add with regard to the process, the proposals, anything I may have missed?
Sure, we can talk about the process. So we sent the RFP to 3 different consultants who were on the city's consultant roster. The value of the contract, the current contract is $29,000 per year, so we use that. And based on $29,000, you have to go out for bid, so we did. 2 firms responded to the bid. One firm is called Local Planning Solutions. It's a gentleman named Gary Cooper is the sole proprietor of it. They're out of Olympia. And the other is SCJ Alliance out of Lacey. 2 very different proposals. Mr. Cooper, his proposal is very much in line with the RFP. In his proposal, he talks about the various things that concern the city, and the SCJ Alliance proposal is a little different. Their proposal meets all the requirements that we put out. Their way of approaching it would be, instead of every other Tuesday for 4 hours, they would have somebody down here 3 hours every week, and we'd work out a schedule. Is that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? We don't know what that looks like. That would be, the contract that would come from the RFP if they were selected. So 2 different ways of approaching the service, and that's really where the challenge was between the city and TRPC. Again, if you look at what they do for us, TRPC, what they do for us, there's really a strategic aspect, and there's the day-to-day building stuff that they do, and it's that day-to-day stuff that was kind of killing us. TRPC is in a place where they're pretty rigid as to whatever their standards are. But the standards, particularly here in Tenino, we have a little wider latitude in our ordinances than does some of the stuff that they deal with at TRPC, and consequently there's a little more gray in our world than theirs. And that's where the challenge lies. So Mr. Cooper, he says he can beef up, if you will, or provide a more robust presence during those 4 hours twice a month, whereas SCJ wants to come down here more often, but for a little less time each often. And quite frankly, we don't care as long as the work we want done gets done. But I suspect if we're going through the evaluation process, and we have a little checklist, do they meet all the mandatory stuff, and then we start talking about this kind of stuff, well, this guy wants to do it this way, and here's the advantages, and those guys want to do it that way, and here's their advantages, and which one do we think is going to work better is how we used to score it, and whoever gets the highest score is who we would entreat with for an agreement.
One of the things that we want to ensure is happening is that the work that we want done is the work getting done. And not, and it should be, and not the tail wagging the dog. So, when we set out an agenda and we set out priorities, those should be the priorities of, our contractors, our employees, our staff, our subordinates, and there's give and take. Not to say that we certainly take advice from our attorney, and we take advice from our police chief and our staff and everybody else, and but when the council sets out an agenda, and has priorities, those are the things that need to be the priorities of everybody. And, you know, that, we've had some heartache over whether or not that was happening sometimes.
So we're close. The current contract actually ends on 31 December. Our timeline, we gave ourselves till this coming Friday to make a decision. We're going to ask you later in the business section, you know, with a caveat, we're trying to give us the maximum amount of time to make a decision, dicker with whoever gets selected, because honestly we don't know. We have no preference. Get an agreement in front of them, get that agreement through the attorney, and then have them go to work on 1 January. So it's a pretty compressed timeline, but it's really doable. And what we're going to ask you for later is the caveat will be, you know, we want to do this. Please give us the authority to enter into the agreement once we've made a selection and we get the contract through the attorney.
Yeah, the relationship with TRPC is good, is fine. It's, you know, this going through this, you know, I spoke with their director Mark Daly quite a bit, and you know, we've hung out socially. You know, there's a lot of mutual respect, and I think he understands kind of some of our frustration. They were even going as far as, you know, looking at hiring some additional folks that maybe specialize in small town or small city planning processes and needs, but it was kind of hard for them because, you know, they couldn't gauge whether or not, you know, the demand was there enough, and you know, so they're, you know, they have limitations and budgets too, but the kind of the direction we went was also based in part on some of his advice. And so like the gentleman, Mr. Cooper, was one of his employees that was there and was very good at small city planning, and then he went out on his own, and now he works directly with small communities to do planning. So
How long has he been on his own now?
I have no idea. I don't think very long. But he, you know, for a while he was one of TRPC's staff planners. So, you know, we'll have to review the proposals and then make a recommendation to council, and you all would vote to authorize the administration to enter into a contract, and then we turn the page and keep moving. Thoughts?
No, I just wanted to know how long he was on his own now.
Okay.
But he's just basically doing the same thing he did for them, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on its own.
Yeah, in SCGA, same thing. You know, they've been around forever. We already work with them on various other efforts. So, you know, there may be some opportunity to kind of like merge. And you know, there wouldn't, you know, not a lot of front loading would be needed on our, you know, kind of on what our vision is and what our needs are, because they've been there for a while, and they're already. They've already got a $75,000 contract to do some master planning here in the city. They've been helping with various other things. So I think there's some real opportunity for us to kind of be able to be move a little faster in our planning processes.
I guess my only comment is, I'm not against this, I just am curious how our having a separate planner from Yokota and Rainier. I know we're not tied physically, but making sure that when we're doing things, that we're kind of looking at what each other's doing and make sure we're not bumping heads or doing things that are going to interfere with other things. So how is that communication going to happen between those other jurisdictions? Just, and I don't think it's a huge deal, but just to make sure whoever we pick, if we pick somebody else, has that kind of at least some kind of basic interaction with the other organizations. Yeah.
Or go into a shared contract.
Oh yeah.
And that was kind of TRPC's fear, is
They're gonna lose all of it.
that would, and if that happens, you know, this is, you know, we're not the only ones that were saying, hey, there's an issue here.
Yeah.
We're just the first ones that are doing something about it.
Right.
So
Yeah, like I said, it's not, I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying, I just hope if we have two different ones, we have some kind of process.
yeah,
to
I
at
think
least
that's
touch
where
bases once in a while.
being the part of being a TRPC member, I think that's where that kind of regional nexus happens.
To the board, I mean, you're part of one of their boards, so there's those, and we're still tied to them. I mean, they are the Metropolitan Planning Authority here, so I had the conversation with Katrina today, because we were talking about pretty much the same thing, you know. What about, you know, if we were to, you guys did our long-range planning, and you know, the short-range stuff is somewhere else. And, oh, it's tied to the comprehensive plan, and I'm like, well, then you guys are the perfect ones to do it. I mean, I don't particularly understand their rationale, but.
Mark's thing was that if you're gonna be doing the short-term planning, you should be in tune with the long-term planning.
Well, you know, that's what you were describing before, you know, that council sets out the goals and everybody gets behind it. You have to read the documents. But for whatever reason, it made sense to them. They didn't want to. They were sensitive to our needs. And as Katrina explained, the difference here is whoever, you know, however we decide to approach our planning, long or short term, as long as we put the plan together as a dues-paying member of the TRPC, they are more than happy to review those plans to ensure that we are in fact between our lines. Now, if we ask them to write the plan for us, that's different. And what we're, you know, attempting to do, we you know, whichever firm we ultimately wind up contracting with is irrelevant. If we want to, in addition, contract with the TRPC for a special thing, we can do that too. So we're not tying our hands here.
Anything else? That brings us to Councilmember Susan Copeland has tendered her resignation to become effective following December 11th, 2018, regular meeting of the Tenino City Council. So I'll just read it into the record. Dear Mayor and fellow council members, I want to first start off with thanking all of you for the kindness and patience you have shown towards me over the past 3 years. It has not gone unnoticed or unappreciated. After a lot of thought and conversations with my family, I've decided to resign from my position as council member number 5. I feel that between the additional duties my career requires, along with taking care of myself and my family, I am unable to dedicate the time to the position. So she did get that big promotion, and that's why she has been hard to pin down. The city and the community deserve. I have enjoyed my time on the council, and this was not an easy decision. I wish all of you the best, and I will continue to support the city and work that you do. Special thanks to the mayor for convincing me to run. I would have never done without persistent nudge. Last council meeting was December 11th. Again, I am thankful to all of you for the work and dedication you do for our small town. Small town, yeah. She's like, yeah, she says so.
I think she did that on purpose.
Strike red and put the correction.
We can't, that was John tell you.
So we can't accept the resignation until she makes a correction.
Reject your resignation.
Yeah. So and this has been something she's been wrestling with it for the last couple months. She and I have talked about it when she first brought it up, maybe 3 months ago, 2 months ago, because she felt bad that she wasn't able to make every meeting consistently. You know, I relayed to her what we had all talked about, that, you know, we're all very comfortable with her level of involvement. There's no issue right now, that we appreciate her presence and the role she plays, and that everybody trusts her, and we really like her on the board, and she appreciated that. And I did say, whatever you're going to do, please wait until the end of the year so that we can get through the budget, because it would have been hard for anybody to kind of new person to jump into the middle of it. She said that she would at least do that, and that she would think about it. And then this is kind of where she's at now, or this is totally where she's at now. So it sucks. Everybody, I don't know, Susan's done a great job. Councilmember Copeland, has done a great job. But it's a personal decision, and I understand. So what we would need to do, we don't need to do anything. But I would say that as an agenda item, especially when the press fella gets here, we would want to formally accept her letter. We can provide a copy of the letter to the newspaper, and then we will immediately put out a notice in the newspaper and on the website saying that we have a vacancy. I think everybody here has been through that procedure. You know, I think Linda, you were originally appointed,
Right.
and Dave was appointed, and John O'Callahan's been through multiple. You weren't appointed, but you've taken part. You participated in probably 24 appointment processes. So we would put out the call. We would accept applications, and you know, we would go from there, and then a recommendation would come forward for the council to approve or deny or confirm or not confirm, and then hopefully we could get that all squared away by the first meeting in January, which gives us a good month to figure out. If not, you know, it's not a big hurry, but we will diligently cast the net. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, we can't accept her resignation. Her letter is incorrect.
Yes, there was an error in your letter. We will prepare like a letter of appreciation or some kind of proclamation for the December 11th meeting. She will be here then, or she intends to be here then, and we can adopt that, and you know, something saying that, you know, we'll identify some things that she's done, how long she's been here.
Like you did with Craig.
Yep, how much we appreciate her participation. Something like we would do for everyone except Dave.
Thank you. I don't like to be recognized. I prefer to be with that.
Yeah, that's why you're losing so much weight, so we can
Yeah,
recognize you.
so, and then, you know, we can, you know, thank her formally, but. What's up? Something happened?
No, I was trying to help you. You can tell it to do that, and that kind of solves some of your issue.
Okay, I'll play that. Anything else? That's it for our work session. Dave, you want to tell your story?
Dave's gonna tell his story. This is
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's not as exciting as she made it
Oh,
sound.
it's
Oh, I'm
It's
really
funny, it's
anticipating
funny.
this.
So I hurt my back over Thanksgiving.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's not funny.
Wait,
So like for a week, I can really. Anyway, today I did that one of the drive things where I take people to a medical appointment.
Okay.
And went up to Federal Way to one of the clinics up there. She was supposed to take like an hour, but she was like normal. It's like 3 hours later and she still wasn't done. So I was kind of wandering around outside because it was sunny at that point, it wasn't raining. Nobody else around except for me outside. And all of a sudden, help me, just like this panic. And I'm thinking, oh God, you know, I kind of like,
You're gonna be a
it's like,
fireman now.
yeah, it's like this lady's hanging half out of her car, hanging on the side. You know, she was trying to get in her car and didn't get on the seat and slipped. And like a
Okay.
90-year-old lady.
Oh, okay.
And so I get over there and I think it's probably her daughter says, yeah, she has a fractured spine and
Oh,
I can't move her, you know, and this lady's kind of just clawing under the car, so I'm thinking, God, my back's killing me. I can't.
Both can have fractured
I
spines.
can't let this lady fall, especially if she has a spinal fracture
just go.
already. So I get in there, I'm trying to lift her, and luckily she wasn't real big, but so I managed to get her on her seat. So I think it out good, you know, my back wasn't too bad, but we got her and they were thankful, so that was nice. So like I said, I'm waiting there for like 3 hours, so I go inside finally because I was getting tired of standing, and I'm sitting there and there's an old man, another, you know, typical clinic, it's like a 90-year-old guy that can barely walk, and this lady's helping him, and she says, sir, do you have somebody here that can help you? And he says, no, I'm here all by myself. He drove from like who knows where. And he could hardly walk, so we ended up getting a wheelchair, and I wheeled this guy over to get him checked in.
Working.
Yeah, it's like I went work. So he goes up there and says, yeah, I've got an appointment. They go, no, you don't have an appointment today. And he's like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was like, well, you know. So they finally figured out he had an appointment at the urgent care, and so they wheeled him off. So that one wasn't that big a deal. So I'm still sitting there waiting. This lady walks to the door, she goes to sit down next to me and falls. Right in front of me.
The gravity was different
Yeah.
that day.
Apparently she was, after hearing her talk to the nurse, she was taking some kind of pain. She got dizzy, you know? I was like, oh my God, you know, so this lady's on the floor and she didn't get hurt, but she was shaking. You know how when you fall,
Well,
that
sure,
shakes you up,
yeah.
you don't really get hurt. So I helped her kind of get up, and she could help me a little bit, but it was like one thing after another.
You need to put your bunker gear back on.
Gravity's stronger there.
Yeah, it was, it's just one thing after another. I've never been sitting someplace like that. There's so many.
Falling.
You are getting so quick at running down there and coming back. John.
He doesn't
Get my
like around, he
exercise.
just sleeps over the side.
There was an editorial in the newspaper from a former mayor, Mayor Pettit, regarding the absence of a Coast Guard flag at the memorial, and I'll let John go into the details of the decision because it has to do with like federal codes and flag ordinances and Article 9(7)(b) of the Military Officers Act, and but from from what the way I see it is, it is not a monument to the military and the armed services. It is a monument to veterans who died. The peoples whose names are on the stone, it says it was an oversight in the newspaper of not having that flag in there. It was not an oversight. It was an intentional decision. And those named on the monument are armed services members, none of which were in the Coast Guard. So there is no Coast Guard flag because there are no dead service members from the Coast Guard that are named. John can explain it further as far as he got into like 1919 Congress passed an act that stated. So you go.
The point is, and I think Mayor Fournier made it well, is it's a veterans memorial. It's not an armed forces memorial. I took issue with the letter in the paper because it is factually incorrect. If you're going to lecture me about what is wrong and right, you had better know what you're talking about. There are armed forces and there are uniformed services. If you're going to tie it up in, again, factual statements, be correct. Anyone that has ever worn a uniform understands that sometimes we say things and we fall in on it if it's applicable. Example, Marines and soldiers. While they're in uniform, Marines hate to be called soldiers. And when they're in uniform, soldiers hate to be called Marines. But when their service is done and they are veterans, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't. And then if you start analyzing the constituent components of each branch of the armed forces, you find that they're composed of uniformed services, and each of these services have different components, any of whom could make the same claim that their flag should be on the monument. Again, it's not a monument to the services, it's a monument to the veterans who served. Over and above that, our own Congress does not help the situation out. There are 3 military departments: the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. Where do Marines go? They belong to the Navy. Where's the Coast Guard? What are they doing? If they're doing law enforcement, then they're part of Homeland Security, and while they may be an armed force, they're not doing anything with respect to what veterans normally are associated with. When they're operating with the Navy, guess what? Now it's the Secretary of the Navy. And so to put a flag up there for a branch of the armed forces, when you don't know what they're doing, if you're doing that in the name of recognizing everybody, well, exactly who are you recognizing?
Well, it's pretty simple. We were recognizing
Veterans.
veterans.
Yeah.
fallen veterans.
If you have him explain that after 4 cups of coffee, it's dangerous.
And then,
Yes, yes.
you know, if you look at our memorial, there's no ranks on there. There's no ranks on there, there's no branches of service. They are all fallen heroes. You can call whatever you want. They answered the call.
They stepped up when our country needed them.
Right, and again, those of us that have worn the uniform understand that that's what it's about. It's not about whose flag is back there. I mean, that adds to the pageantry and stuff like that, but it's really meaningless. It's what those people did.
So he put together a great response, just because, you know, it was felt like it was warranted. So if you are asked questions about, you know, why or what, that you now have the, you know, the information.
No problem.
This goes like this.
Okay. What else? The first tympanum is finished. You guys all got a copy?
Yeah.
It looks pretty fantastic. It's pretty cool. You know, these guys are, you know, that really even in the last, you know, 6-7 years since the city has we've gotten pretty heavy into having these folks do, you know, Tenino sandstone carving. That much more than I can ever remember. So we've done quite a few civic projects that involve Tenino stone carving, and the level of sophistication and what they do has come a long ways. And I was talking with them out at the quarry about this today when, you know, we were kind of doing one of our first sandstone carving projects for the city. It was, you know, it was kind of almost one-dimensional, and it was instead of this is a raised relief, it was like a boss relief or something. So instead of cutting the stone out away, you would cut the image into the stone, which is a much more elementary way to carve it. But then carving the image and having the image come out of the stone is a lot more complex. It's a lot more expensive, and so for the city to be able to figure out ways to fund this level of sophistication is pretty cool on our part. And then for these folks to get to do this is really cool. And there's, go ahead.
Did Keith and Ed do this, or
Ed did this.
Ed did.
So Ed is doing all the tympanums. Keith and Dan did the voussoir stones, and they're getting noticed by like people like, you know, high level stone, you know, mucky mucks. And there's some folks coming down from Seattle tomorrow to have lunch with Bill Lanker and Troy and Ed and Keith, to just kind of, you know, there's these folks that, you know, when there's a church that needs to be cobbled together in England, there's a half a dozen people in the country that are able to do it, and this like agent is meeting with Bill and Troy and Keith and Ed tomorrow, and it's, you know, because I guess he saw it in the newspaper and came down and kind of was nosing around. There's been like random people nosing around that are like agents of stone carvers, and they're, you know, they'd never heard of Keith, you know, this guy, and so, you know, I didn't know there was a guy that did this thing even on the West Coast. And so they're getting to put all these pieces together and kind of get this recognition for, you know, themselves and also for our, you know, our industry and our community, and it's pretty cool.
Open up a couple new mines there pretty soon.
Maybe. There was one gentleman they were talking about that came down that was explaining his business, and this guy had bought up the villages in China that were going to be flooded before the Three Gorges Dam was built. And so there's all these like 1,000-year-old villages with stone buildings. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel good. But this gentleman bought up like hundreds and hundreds of buildings of these ancient, you know, stone houses, and then, you know, he dismantled them, shipped the stones here, cuts the veneer off of the stone, and then uses that old hand-carved veneer and puts it on $1 million mansions on the front. and that's a big industry. And then they also, you know, because it's pretty expensive to have folks here, and they outsource the stone carving to China. This is weird. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it kind of feels, you know, it doesn't feel good. But like, they will get the engineering done up, ship over the engineering documents. They will have laborers in other countries that work for less money, but are highly skilled stone carvers. Carve up, like, so those arches in the wall. They would just, you know, ship off documents to China, and then Chinese stone carvers for much less money would carve out the stones, and they would ship it piece by piece, and then folks like Bill and Troy would assemble the Chinese stones.
I hear there's gonna be a tariff on those pretty soon.
Probably, yeah. Well, this with the steel tariffs, we're gonna go back to building stone buildings because we can't afford the steel. But then these guys, they had no idea that kind of larger corporate stone world existed until these guys started coming nosing around the wall, and you know they've had a lot of interesting visitors. So it's I don't know, it's wild. But this will go in this weekend, which is exciting. So we'll have the first tympanum put in. Ed was pretty excited that he'd never done something that had weep holes. So if you look at the bottom of it, there's half circles, semicircles that are cut out. You will have brass pipes that sit underneath this, and then there's channels behind here, because if you look at that wall, it gets wet, you know, so all the water kind of comes and weeps through it, and he's got to have it to where the water will weep out. And so he was kind of excited to get to try to do that. If you look at the one that the entryway that Keith built, he has rubber tubes like running throughout the facade that are like weep holes in it. You wouldn't even know they're there, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cool, kind of interesting. It'd be cool to see the brass like patina within it.
Yeah.
So now that our newspaper guru is here, we will move to the oath of office for Officer Sam Garcia. Do we have a copy?
Yes.
Okay.
File right there.
Alright.
You need to put an X on the floor where you need to stand.
Right.
So you feel like you're gonna start.
Alright. Closer. Alright. So repeat after me. I, Samantha Garcia,
I, Samantha Garcia,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
the Constitution and state of laws of the State of Washington,
and the ordinances and regulations
and the ordinances and regulations
of the City of Tenino,
of the City of Tenino,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
perform and discharge the duties of the office
of
Reserve Police Officer for the City of Tenino, according to the law, to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Officer Garcia. Welcome.
Glad to have you here. We're all glad to have you on the board.
That concludes our work session agenda. If anybody else has any work session items before we kind of take a recess, let me know.
I will, just let them know that I need to do it in our session is, I think I can announce this and let people know now. Puget Sound Energy, the state has what's called the Clean Energy Fund, where they award grants to utility providers to do green innovation and stuff. PSC has chose the city of Tenino and put in $2 million of grants for projects in Tenino.
Kind of big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I mean, you would not believe, and it's competitive, so there could be some, doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna get the whole 10 million, but in the past, it's been pretty successful from what I've seen. They got, most of the utilities that have put in grants have put, so it's a big deal, and the projects, that they put in for, one of them is just outside of town, out by McIntosh Lake, where they have a lot of outages. So they want to put in a battery out there to see if they can solve the problem with a battery. That'll solve that outage problem out there. They want to do a fairly large solar project and battery backup right next to the substation over there by the high school. And they will tie that backup system into the high school so the high school can be used as an emergency operations center with backup power. And the third one, they want to do something out at the wastewater treatment plant, and so we'll have
Another battery.
another battery and maybe some solar out there too. The idea behind that one is to see if one of the things with renewable energy coming on, they need to sometimes reduce load with a battery because you have don't have solar, a cloud comes over, so you don't have as much solar, so you need a battery to kick in and kind of fill in that spot. So their idea is, can we use the battery to help reduce the loads at the wastewater treatment plant at times when there's a high demand? So if they get all those, it's a huge thing for the city.
Especially at the wastewater treatment.
Yeah, there's some, that's enough. But on January 17th, we're having a breakfast meeting at the high school, or not the high school, but at the district office. You are all invited, the mayor, and it's just going to talk about the whole project and what we're doing and how we're trying to get it all. January 17th at 7:30.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working.
Yeah. So, council's
You know what
invited.
you're doing, I have no idea what I'm doing January 17th. Oh, it's
Thank you.
Bye.
The other thing that I'll maybe work with you on later is she would, because we're trying to make this, this is Tenino's project, but the idea is how can small towns across Washington integrate renewable energy or do projects like this. So she would like to invite the mayors from Rainier, Yelm, and Bucona, because we're all kind of South County, and especially Trans-Alta project with the loss of jobs affects this whole area. So she said, hey, could you invite those mayors to attend also if they'd like to. So either I will, or maybe through you somehow we can send some kind of formal invitation to come down and if they would like to.
But it's at 7, where is it?
7:30 at the district office.
At PSC.
No, it's
Tenino.
not here in Tenino.
School district.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, well, I might be able to get in. I'll talk to him, see if I can come in late, because I would like to be there. They're pretty good.
We also have a presentation that same day in the afternoon at Trans-Alta for a grant from them afterwards at 1 o'clock. So I was thinking about it the other day, is that what's nice about this is they're not competing for dollars from like the ag park or anything, because they're kind of two different programs. They each have their different funding sources. So at first I was kind of like, well, shoot.
You've been good about getting funding from that source.
Yeah, so
It's worked
anyway,
out well.
hopefully, seems like things kind of like the ag park pieces are coming together, and we're getting a lot of support. WSU's on board to give us some money. Energy program. Bonneville Education Foundation is going to put some money in to help support the school program, putting that together, and so we're getting a lot of kind of attention from players in the energy field.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is the first week of session,
Yeah.
if I can get, yeah, but I bet it's a Thursday, I bet I can
If
get
you
it.
can, I'll fill you in kind of what we talked
Okay,
about.
but I would like to be there.
Ride that train for everything it's worth.
All right, any other items before we take a
Yeah,
recess?
We had to add this statement in there, increase of 0%.
All right, that concludes the work session. We'll take a 2-minute recess.
How you doing over there, Dan? Did it come up for you?
Oh, I don't have, this isn't internet capable. It's not connected in any way. I don't have Wi-Fi.
Fix that too.
But I can get it when I get back to the office.
Okay. It's up to you.
No, I can't go online
Oh.
with this net, but it's not.
Oh, it won't.
It doesn't have, it
A
needs
wireless.
it needs a wireless thing,
Okay, I got
attachment. So, but I can call it the,
I'll send it to you so you can read it.
okay.
Yeah. So, when you come back, I'll ask you something.
We need to meet with Tyler and go over that. Do you have the copies of that, the circus contract?
I have them at home, yeah.
Okay, he was curious about what we need to do, so.
Well, I don't wanna just take them down there and leave them, I think
No,
we need to
like the
talk.
three of us need to sit
Right,
down and,
right.
you know, you and I need to go over with him what the
What the
circus
man
guy
said, the guy said, yeah, okay.
So my suggestion tonight, because we have this new minutes, the new way to do these, don't go flying through
Slow down a little bit.
yeah, the motions and stuff, so I can get them and save them, because if I go to the next one,
Can't go ahead.
it just
Fixes
loses
it.
You can actually record your votes now.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
No, I mean,
Dave was a brat. He said no.
I think it will only be a challenge for these, for the quick ones.
Yeah. Just need this.
Can we go down to pizza place and get a district?
Right now? Yes, okay. Good evening. Welcome to the, December?
27th.
November 27th. I'm looking at it, I'm like 11, that's what month? November 27, 2018, Tenino City Council meeting. Let the record show that all council members are present with the exception of Councilmember Lawton and Councilmember Copeland. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We have an agenda before us
Move approval.
needing approval. Oh, I got a second. It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to the meeting minutes for November 13, 2018.
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the November 13, 2018 Tenino City Council meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to the consent calendar.
Move approval.
This is the consent calendar consisting of November 14, 2018 through November 27, 2018 payroll EFTs in the amount of $27,523.26 and claims checks 27767 through 27789 in the amount of $38,294.75 for a grand total of $65,818.01. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We have no executive session and we have no presentations. It brings us to public comment. Public comment period, while specifically designed to afford any interested person the opportunity to notify the council regarding any issues of concerns to the individual making the comments. It is also the opportunity for such person to indicate their approval or disapproval of any council action, city policy, city employee, or to just comment about any particular interest in the person may have. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to provide public comment, please come forward and do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll be moving on. Remind you, we have a public comment period at the end, if you were shy. Public hearing. Notes for the public hearing.
We're prepped this time.
Thank you. That brings us to our public hearing. The public hearing is for public input and discussion of the 2019 budget and expenditures. This public hearing will proceed in an orderly fashion, and I would like to ask your cooperation in the following procedure. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to be heard. The clerk will be recording what is said. Therefore, when you address the council, please begin by stating your name and address. Before hearing from the audience, I'm going to introduce Mr. John Millard, the city's clerk treasurer, to present information about this project. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Millard.
Good evening, council members, mayor, and members of the public. This discussion is a continuation of the public hearing that was begun last council meeting. That discussion was about revenues. This discussion is about expenditures. We use the same methodology where possible, and we have the data to support it. We use fixed cost methods. So, for example, the contract we were talking about earlier with TRPC, that's $29,000. So there's no averaging, there's no nothing. That's the contract price. Where we could do that, that's our preferred method. The majority of the figures, just as in revenues, were arrived at by simple averaging. We have 5 years of data to do that with without very much difficulty at all, so that makes that fairly accurate. Let's see. If you have your agenda packet in front of you, then it just goes into, we have now put the 5-year spreadsheet into the BIAS program, and beginning on page, hang on, the big square number 33, page 33 in your packet, starts the revenues, I'm sorry, 32, starts the revenues. And we can spend as much or as little time on any of these things as you would like. Again, we're looking at expenditures. The highlights of expenditures are the pay raise for the city's employees. That's a 2.5% COLA across the board, effective 1 January. And everyone whose supervisor recommends them will be eligible for a step increase next year if they, once they achieve a year's time with the city, which I think everybody does now. Everybody's been here for years.
Yes.
Jack was the last one, right? So everyone will be getting, between the COLA and their step increase, they'll be getting a 5% raise at some point throughout the year. Significant investment in tourism. If you like to use real estate analogies, all our work in the park is we built it. The real estate theory is build it and they will come. Well, we don't want to wait for them. We want to go get them and point them in this direction and give them some incentive to come here. So we're going to invest in those strategies and do that. Again, a significant investment in education and training for the staff, for the opportunities for the elected officials to do the same. We've seen the results of what sending our folks to the various conferences and workshops brings. The mayor was talking about it in terms of the stone carvers, but believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the work we've been doing right here at this table on every other Tuesday night has gotten a tremendous amount of attention around the state. We're being looked at as, examples of how to get stuff done with limited resources and, limited amount of time, which is a resource, I understand. So kudos to you. And this budget process that we've embarked upon has been facilitating that. We look at where the needs are, we focus the attention in the monetary resources that way, and we go on about our business. So pending your questions, that's the budget discussion.
At this time, the floor is open for comments from the audience. In fairness to all in attendance, each person will be given an opportunity to address the council for an initial period not to exceed 3 minutes. If more time is needed, it will be made available after everyone has had a chance to speak. I am requesting the council members hold their questions of the public until everyone is done. At this point, if there is anyone in the public that would like to provide testimony, please come forward and do so. Seeing none, I will move on. Are there any, there's no non-repetitive information. Council members, do you have any questions of the audience or of the staff?
I just have one question.
Please, you wanna turn
At
your,
our last
can you turn your,
Our last CIP meeting, it was discussed our participation in the HHSC, which I'm not exactly sure, is that budgeted for this next year? They're gonna ask for a commitment, whether we wanna still be part of that, so I just wanted to check.
we have
if that
received nothing.
from them.
There was also discussion about Thurston Thrives wanting money. We have received nothing from them about that, so we don't know what to budget for.
Were we part of that last year though?
Thurston Thrives?
No, HHSC.
Yeah, it's part of CIP.
Yeah.
And the funds from that comes, the last run came from CDBG funds,
Okay.
so.
So, okay, I'll pass that on and tell them we need to.
If, so,
Because they did mention that.
we are, we're funded to participate in CIP next year through the CDBG
Okay.
funds. But in the HHSC, I don't know how, if that, I think
It's all together.
it's the same thing. So yeah, so we are funded through next year until the next CDBG cycle comes around, and then we would, figure out, if we continue doing that, or if individual cities are gonna fund it through their budget, or if we just don't participate
It
anymore.
was a pretty small amount, I believe, when I asked.
I think in total it was like $12,000 between the 3 cities,
Oh, maybe.
not a piece.
Yeah.
Right.
As
Like
I
in
say,
total, well, it might be 30.
Yelm was pretty big, but
Yeah, it
it was
might-
like $800, I think, and like, it was 90 for recode or something like that, it was
Is that
I thought that's-
$90?
something like that.
I'm-
Ours was 800.
For some reason, I think it was 31,000 for 3 years.
Okay.
For all South County cities is what was designated. So that would be, 10,000 a year, 10,000 a year, 10,000 a year, and a majority of it was Yelm. It was like,
That was a big-
Yelm was like 7,000, Tenino was like
It was
1,300.
based on the sales tax or something, like 0.1% of
Yeah.
the gross sales tax or something, so, yeah. Anyway, okay, I just wanted to check on that, and I will, Thurston Thrive said they're gonna get to us, so I'm not sure when they plan.
I
on
think
getting
they're
to us.
still trying to figure out how they're going to reorganize and figure out what they are.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So they're still kind of, it'll be 2 more years before they get that figured out. But they would have to come down here and talk to us about, I would think, before we start talking about funding them or putting money in, they need to come down here and talk to us, talk about what they are, and then how they are governed and how cities participate in it, because I'm not in favor of having a governing organization that is not tied to any elected offices or anything like that. You can't have it's like some Bilderberg group or some, some weird cabal that is not tied to any, elected offices. But that's my 2 cents.
I'll just pass it on to them, they need to, if they want funding, they need to come down and talk to us about it.
Tell them they gotta come kiss the ring.
Yeah.
Use those words. That was horrible.
Yes, it was.
I'd like to. Are there any other council members that have any other questions?
Not a council member, Mr. Mayor, but if I may,
Go ahead.
I got an alibi here. A lot of chatter out there. I expected more folks in the audience tonight. If you can believe social media, we would have been inundated. Recall 2 years ago, the FCS rate study recommended that 3 consecutive years of increases, 2% on the water side, 3% on the sewer side. This will be year number 2 of that. So yes, we talked about it very briefly last time, but I just wanted to make a point of it this time. This budget does include the FCS rate study recommended 2% water and 3% sewer rate increases.
Thank you.
Which, yeah, I would just add to anybody that may be watching this is concerned about it, those are proprietary funds. We cannot fund those things through our general fund, and so, yeah.
We're not making money
Making
on
money
it.
on it, yeah.
It goes back into the system.
And maintenance of the system, yeah. Future maintenance.
All right. The public testimony of the hearing is now closed. That brings us to old business.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate the new system here. One thing that I liked with board docs was kind of the format.
Right.
Where, you know, and maybe it's just because I'm used to it, but if there's a way that we could kind of still like have some similar format to where, you know, on the agenda maybe, I mean, because we design the PDF, right?
No. If you would look over here.
I don't want to look over there.
So this
Anyway,
this system, my term is board docs is very elegant.
Okay.
You call it up, you make a change, it's immediately reflected. It's very smooth. It's very slick. This system is very clunky. It takes multiple steps to get anything done. It's okay because the end product is the PDF agenda packet is a much better product in the end. I think we're going to have a couple of iterations. You know, there'll be little hiccups. There are some things that we can do in here to help guide us through the meeting, but the format is kind of set.
Yeah. No, I'm saying this format. You know,
Right.
it was, you know, I got really used to this.
Two panes to work with,
As
right?
you know, like having the, but what I'm saying is, is there a way that when we build, and we don't need to talk about this now. I mean, this is when we build this now. You know, we would have these subcategories. So when I would see old business, you know, we don't need where it says meeting, category, all that, but type, action, discussion, information. I think that's crucial. Recommended action, and then the content, the public content. But the recommended action, I think, in the public content are key. So when I look at, what were you gonna say?
No.
No?
We can't, because that is a change to their.
This format
program.
is set.
Right. Our choices with that is, with respect to the headings, the reason there are no numbers on the big headings are so that, you know, item number 12 can immediately track to the PDF. This is all set up to do the PDF file.
We just can't do that. We're not there yet. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, is board docs is very elegant,
Okay.
this is not.
So at a future meeting, I would be tracking along here, and we would maybe get to old business. I would hit 11, and then would pull up Lexipol document, and there would be like a cover page to Lexipol's
Yes.
document. There was our document that said staff action, staff recommended action, how it was reviewed.
Well,
That staff action report, you remember that? That kind of, you know, to me, that's like our first introduction and then reintroduction to the subject.
So
And
you
it-
know what the
Yeah.
outcome is supposed to be.
Yeah, it kind of helps prep everybody and, you know, let the council know what we've done and where we want to go. We can talk about it another time. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
this is our, you know, figure it out to make it, we can make it elegant. I'll get back on track. Get your act together, Wayne. As discussed during the budget hearings, the administration requests authority to enter into an agreement with Lexipol to provide education, training, and administrative support to the Tenino Police Department. The stated cost of the proposed agreement is $7,075 per year, but the RMSA will reimburse up to half of those costs in the name of risk reduction. So Chief Swain will talk to us about what Lexipol is and what we're signing up for and what the goals would be. And
Good evening,
can you turn? Thank you.
How's that? Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor, distinguished guests. Robert Swain, your Chief of Police. Lexipol has been around for a long time, and a lot of police departments throughout the country use it for its primary purpose is to make sure policies and procedures are correct and to best practices, even for the smallest department to the largest urban department. Lexipol has been used for that purpose. In addition to that, they offer training sections, modules, if you will, that officers can do online. And these training modules are accepted by the Washington State standards for the 24 hours additional training that's required to maintain your certification in this state each year. So obviously to us, that's a big deal because it means I don't have to send anybody to training. I can have them watch the in-service training online. So
We probably also meet our RMSA member requirements as well.
yes, that's correct. And so one of the big things, and I want to say I appreciate the city's support in this, is having used this program before in my previous experience. Lexipol provides the updates, which is critical to maintaining a robust and complex, sometimes too complex policy manual. So as a new policy is enacted and I sign off on it, after review with the team, Lexipol will actually send it out electronically to each team member so that they get it, and then as a point of contact to that, they will then make sure that whatever we have, a hard copy or the electronic copy, is updated as well. And that's done every 30 to 60 days. We kind of decide on what period of time will go by before they look at it again. But if we start this relatively soon, we're actually going to get 13 months for 12 months worth of pay. So we'd like to start it in December, and we'd like to move forward with it. I'm excited to do it. The current policy manual, just so you're aware, is adequate. However, it does need updating and hasn't been updated for quite some time. And myself and you all have met John Steins, the retired chief from Tumwater. We've been going over some significant differences that have been noted within the current policy manual that we want to clarify and make sure that we're doing what's best practice throughout the nation. So I'll take your questions.
I'll just make a comment. We used it at the fire department when I was in Lacey, and it is very valuable, especially the training and policies, like you said. It tracks when somebody gets it and reads it, so you have documentation that they've actually, instead of just put it in a book, you have documentation that they've received it, and so it's a very useful tool, I believe, for the police department.
I would agree with that, and it helps us so that when you have to do some sort of update with the courts, or you have to do some sort of disciplinary action, hopefully not, but if you do, the old saying, well, I never saw that policy, and that it helps with that they have to sign off on it, and they're responsible and held accountable for it, which is a huge thing when it comes to policy and procedure.
So I think we put 10,000 in the budget to cover this.
Yes.
The real cost is $7,075, and RMSA will reimburse us for half. So yeah, so
it's a pretty good deal. It cost me $20,000 in Oklahoma to get it, but we got a lot more modules with it. But the point being is this is a screaming deal that we got thanks to our membership.
So we're looking for an appropriate.
Well, so yeah, there's I'm not going to belabor the lack of how we figure out to put the kind of our directions kind of in there. But I think, are we asking for approval for? Okay, so we are asking council to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement for use of subscription material with Lexipol. We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion?
Thank you for finding us.
Thank you.
Hearing no further, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
I thank you all.
Very exciting. That brings us to new business, ordinance 895. This is ordinance 895 would amend the 2018 budget in order to zero balance the 2018 budget and establish the beginning balance for the 2019 budget. And I am assuming this is the first reading.
Correct.
So the staff recommendation is to approve ordinance, the first reading of ordinance 895, an ordinance of the city of Tenino amending the budget for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And all those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Sorry. That brings us to ordinance 894. This is an ordinance of the city of Tenino adopting the budget for the fiscal year January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. And we are asking that you approve ordinance 894 first reading.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 894 first reading. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Those will both be presented at the subsequent meeting for second reading and adoption if the council so chooses. Next up, that's the end of this. The administration, after scoring both proposals, are we at this point yet? Or are we still reviewing these?
Well, we're reviewing I beg your pardon. What we're asking you for is recognition that we're still undergoing the process, but in the name of having a contract signed sooner rather than later, that we will go through the process, we will wicker an agreement with whoever is selected, we will have that agreement reviewed by our city attorney, and provided that we get the city's attorney's approval, then would you allow us to enter the contract?
Or pre-approving, basically,
I don't know.
without seeing the actual.
Do we want?
Rather than waiting until December 11th.
Then I'm gonna go through the whole.
Right. Just 2 more weeks.
Yeah. But I mean, we don't lose this. I mean, we're still in contract with TRPC till the end of the year.
That is true.
And I mean,
All this does is give us more time to negotiate a contract.
yeah.
I just feel better having my eyeballs on the contract before any changes are applied to it.
Yeah,
Yeah. So the December, since we are still with your RPC until the end of December, December 11th would be a good time to bring it back for approval or discussion and approval.
Yeah, we'll bring back our recommendation of who we think would be the right fit for Tenino and the contract and ask your approval then. Is
Yeah.
that-
That's,
Okay.
I understand wanting to move quickly on it, but I also would like to see the contract first.
That's understandable. Resolutions, none. Ordinances, none. Reports.
We don't have to have that. I don't think anybody put a report in.
Well, yeah, I think we're still trying to figure out how this thing. Reports, library, fire district, museum.
We had the last meeting of the year. I thanked everybody for allowing me to be chair for the last 3 years. Wayne showed up and I gave him the floor. You can take over from here.
Those meetings are always fun to attend. It's a great group of people. I wanted to go and show appreciation because Councilmember O'Callahan had mentioned that he was no longer going to be, he wasn't going to be putting in to be the president again. So I wanted to go and express our appreciation for the hard work that he has done. And I know that when I say that, he's going to say, it wasn't me, it was everybody else. Cause that's like that's been his mantra, and I know you believe that, and you know that you've been a good leader for the museum, and it's gone well, and so I wanted to express that appreciation from the city, and you know, let them know that you know, the things that they have done since he has taken over have been very impressive, and they're very much appreciated by the community and by the city, and you know, we are in full support of the museum and that nonprofit, and you know, no matter what direction they go leadership-wise, we will continue to have a great relationship and support the museum and South Thurston Historic Society and their efforts. So that was, you know, I really hammered that home and told them that we are very appreciative of their efforts, and talked about a few other things and kind of promised to them that we would, you know, and it was something that's been bothering me, but it really was driven home when I walked up to and I know Linda can attest to this, when you walk up in the dark into the quarry house or around the museum, there is no lighting whatsoever. We installed a new light maybe like a year and a half ago, and it was, instead of a floodlight, it was a spotlight with a motion sensor, and the motion sensor like triggers when cars go by and not necessarily when people are on the steps. And so I promised them that by the end of the year we would fix those things, and because it is
dangerous.
Yeah, it is kind of hazardous to walk through those steps without proper lighting. There is the lighting around the quarry house and the museum is all like residential halogen bulbs, and it just doesn't do the trick. Yeah, and so I won't wait for my report, but Troy and I walked around with our electrician today to the museum, the quarry house, and City Hall, and like when you walk out here, you know, you'll look and that light out there is not on, and it's 3 floodlights that look like they're ones that would be in your like living room. And because I think these are residential lights on the exterior of all our buildings, and it's horrible.
They're living there.
What's that?
They're living out there.
Yeah, yeah. And so we are, you know, I've asked the electrician to come with us, find a solution for tamper-resistant LED spotlight floodlights that will, you know, light up the quarry house and the museum like the 4th of July. They need to be lit up all the way around, all the time when it's dark, all through the night. If you look at the schools at night, they're not dark. You know, they want, you know, we want our officers to be able to see if there's people up there. We want people to be able to, you know, see the ground that they're walking on, because they are gonna go around there at night. So yeah, he's putting together a package for us. This is a maintenance thing, so it's kind of, you know, it's not a big deal. But we're going to look at better and extensive lighting packages for those 3 buildings.
And is there going to be a light in the actual stairwell?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that is necessary also. You can't even lock it or unlock it.
No, it's gonna. No, I'm talking boom.
All the way
It's gonna look like a spaceship.
Okay,
No,
as
but
long as
once you get underneath that ledge there,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
black.
It's not going to be anymore.
Okay,
We are going to have lights, and it's going to
very
be.
much appreciated.
Yes, that is going to
Let's
happen.
face it, there are a lot of old people that
Yes.
use that building.
Elderly, aged, mature.
Yes.
I'm one of them now.
Yeah. So, you know, and so it was. I made it expressly. I was like, this needs to be done by the end of the year. We're going to get this done by the end of the year. So that was something that I pledged to them, and we're going to make sure it happens. And it's a safety thing, and there's an aesthetic value to it. When you drive by City Hall at night and this front porch is dark, it looks dingy, and it looks like there's no spirit. And, you know, we want.
highlight those buildings.
Yeah, we want people to drive by and see it, just like the Tenino sign that was when we didn't even know there were lights there. Yeah, we want people to drive by, and, you know, just like, you know, the Statue of Liberty, the torch is always lit. We want City Hall to be lit and people to know that their government is here, and we've got an amazing building. Troy was even, you know, we're even looking at, you know, once we get that light up there, will there be other opportunities to do cool things like, you know, he's talking about putting rope lights, you know, like underneath the railings all the way around. You know, I don't know, we're gonna see what what the floodlight does on the porch, and if further illumination or ways to highlight our fantastic buildings can be had for relatively inexpensive, we're gonna look into those too.
Just don't make it so light that I can't project my political message on the front of the
Yeah.
building. From across the street.
Anti-rain.
Fire Wayne or.
Yeah.
Okay, a few more.
And we're not gonna go a different color for every cause of the week.
Okay, a few more things about the museum. For example, the Tickner School, the Bell Tower, and the Forestry Building, especially the Tickner School, it's been there for a long time now, and it was supposed to have been gifted to the city. So I brought that up. So the Tickner School, the Bell Tower, the farm, the Forestry
Rota building.
Building. Is the Rota Building not gifted either?
I have no idea. I would assume no.
Okay, well, we'll have to take another closer look at that, but we know those parts aren't gifted to the city yet, and we're working on the paperwork to get that taken care of. The Facebook page that we have, I'm pretty sure you guys are all members, right? Yes, you are. Good. We've got just under 600 people that watch it on a regular basis. I'll be keeping control of that, not control, but just adding stuff to it on a regular basis. The biggest part about that is we've gotten a lot more tours. Each year we get a few more tours from the Facebook page. And those are usually taken care of during the week, and I'll take care of those as well. Like this Monday, I think it was? No, Sunday afternoon. I walked over to the museum to check one of the doors, and it was open. I closed it, not the building doors, the farm building. No big deal. And there were a couple people there just kind of milling around, so I gave them a tour of the museum.
Nice.
Good for you.
The bell tower, we got to hear what the bell sounds like. It's
Yeah?
almost done. I can never remember her name, Brian's sister, right-hand sister.
Janet?
Janet?
Thank you. That's what she had it on her phone, because the Heddens are the ones that found the school that's doing it all for free.
Huh.
So as soon as they get the powder coating on the outside, they'll be sending that over. The housing, everything, all the mechanical parts that are gonna be there, it's beautiful, it really is. And even through the sound of a little bitty cell phone, you can hear how beautiful that.
I wonder if there's a way to put it on a timer to like go off at certain times and
Well, this is gonna be on a rope.
oh, but I mean, it might be something to think about.
Mechanical device that
Have a
goes in
mechanical device that where it's like when school gets out or something, bing!
That's something like Christmas time or something like that, yeah. That would actually be pretty nice. The tower is going to remain the color that it is going to be, because it's all cedar, so it's gonna be treated as cedar, and it's not gonna be painted white like the Tickner School itself is. Everybody at the board meeting, well, the museum meeting, thought that was the best way to go with that. The timber building, we're now waiting on, yet again, one more piece of paper. It's called the state vendor number. They wouldn't allow me to use the city's number because the city doesn't own the building yet. And it would mess all that paperwork up. But
Start all over.
yeah, but I've been told that once we get that number, and we should have it by the end of the week, beginning of next week, government, once we have that number, that gets plugged into the contract, because the contract's ready, it's just waiting on that number. Once we have the number, they'll get us the contract, and we'll have Don sign it, and then all the money gets to start flowing again, so we can finish up that building. That will be real nice. And one of the things that I keep forgetting to bring up are signs that we're gonna put up along some of the highways out here. We have people that are going to allow us to put it on their property, and they're made out of kind of an aluminum thing. It's kind of, without a frame, it's a little wobbly, but once it's framed up, it's gonna hold up for quite some time. They're really nice looking signs. We got 3 of them, and it only cost us, I think it was $600, made on metal, so and the bracing is going to be free. We get a lot of volunteer help on this stuff. It's amazing the people that I've been able to just talk with and meet with and accept donations from.
Well, people are proud of their museum, they really
Yeah,
are.
they really are. There's a whole lot of heart that goes into that, into those buildings out
I'm
there.
gonna tell you that they're very upset that you're leaving, I wanna let you know that. They tell me that all the time.
Really?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yeah, you know something.
No, I really am. It's
4 more years.
yeah.
4 more years.
It's not been a hardship, but it's getting to the point, because we lost the contract and it's 3 hours round trip, that I can't afford to keep taking off work all the time.
Yeah, it's understandable that they're not happy about it anyway.
It's not that I'm leaving, it's just
Yeah,
what I'll
it's
be
just
doing,
gonna
all background stuff.
Right.
And that's pretty much the report that I have for the museum.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Chief of Police.
Oh, and I'll still be the liaison too then.
Good.
Still on? Yes, it is. Good evening again, City Council, Mr. Mayor, Chief of Police Robert Swain. Just a couple of things. I have decided, being here in my 5th month and having seen some of the operations within the department, that one of the critical ones, focuses that I have is on the security of the building. And so to that end, I'm going to be changing a couple of things. Just as an example, there'll be a sign-in log now for anybody that's not law enforcement. There's not a whole lot of traffic that comes in that building anyway, but when it does, I'd like to know who it is. If they come beyond that door, and they have to be escorted by a law enforcement officer if they're there. Hence, our citizens that come in for Citizen Academy, they all have to sign that log showing that they've been behind that door and they're escorted by law enforcement. So the other thing is the combination I found out to the building hasn't been changed in about 10 years. And I know I know that we've lost some employees in that time. I also found out that the videotaping of the camera system that's going on in there, that apparently there were just a couple of people that had access to an app on their phone where they could actually look at those cameras, which cover the outside of the building and also some of the interior hallways and so forth. Those people, I don't know if they still have the app. I don't know if there's some sort of password that's being used.
Imagine just changing
So,
access code.
right, so there's some work to be done there, and I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be doing that. And so you may see, if you ever come visit us, you may see a couple of changes up there. I just wanted to give you a fair warning.
On Facebook next week, somebody will be like, I can't get on the cameras anymore at the police department.
Yeah, what's up with that? I don't know what Chief's doing.
That kind of thing happens. When they change the locks at the school, everybody in town, when the new superintendent came in, he's like, we need to change the locks on the school. Everybody was upset because everybody had keys.
Right, right, yes. And then if you lose one of those keys,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
He was just scratching his head. He's like,
Yeah.
why does everybody have keys to the school?
Right, right.
Everybody
a couple
knows somebody.
Yeah, don't ask me why I don't.
A couple of other things.
Both
We
the last
will
two.
be having the citizens graduation, the academy graduation, the next city council meeting, December 11th. They've got 2 Saturdays left to go, and we'll have completed the first Citizens Academy, and I'm pretty excited about that. The reserve program is moving along. As you saw tonight, we have Officer Garcia. We have 2 more that'll be going into the polygraph and psychological portion of the testing. We don't expect any problems from what we've been able to find out about them through their background investigation. Both of those have been completed. And so by the time it's all said and done, my hope is by the mid part of January, we should have a full force of reserves outfitted and in their training program and ready to go.
When does the Reserve Academy start?
So the nearest one that we were able to find is someplace east of Seattle. I'm not sure what the name of the city is, but we think there's We think that there's gonna be one closer, but we just haven't heard about it yet.
Okay.
Somebody said Lewis County puts one on every year,
They-
and we don't know when
I
that
don't know if it's
does.
every year, but that's usually where we send people.
Yeah, and so we're just waiting. We've got a call into, I don't know, somebody at Lewis County, Seth's got some
Okay.
contacts there. So we hope to get those folks. Now, Sam doesn't need to go through an academy, she's already been through, so she just needs to get through our field training program, which we just formalized as well. So a lot of updating and formalizing and so forth of our procedures and that are gonna take place next year, just to kind of bring us online. I'm going to every meeting I can to talk to our other law enforcement chiefs, and the sheriff and I had breakfast the other morning together. We're getting to know each other, and I think that we'll have a pretty decent relationship as we move forward and help each other out in that regard. And John White just went to SRO school, so he's our SRO for that, for accreditation purposes, and he's now certified through the state. And I'm working with Mr. Belmonte from the schools on their emergency plans, and we have a big meeting this Thursday about that. So just as an example real quick, one of the things that I found out is the schools can't talk to each other. They can hear each other, but their radios cannot actually talk to each other. So if there's an emergency at the high school, then the evacuation point is to the middle school. They have to use a cell phone, call the middle school. High school kids are on their way. We're going to try to change that. Mr. Belmonte